Welcome to the First Mind podcast. I think this is episode 7. So moving right along, I'm super excited to get into this episode. I have Nami Hewitt here as a guest, and she is going to talk to us about her travels internationally and kind of living a nomadic life. This is a subject that has probably been on my mind for quite a while. I think that in my 20s, I would have loved to have lived a nomadic life. I've always had kind of this pull to travel abroad, maybe even live abroad. But I think that, I grew up in the 70s and 80s, and that was just not something that was really something that people did or was kind of championed or supported. So I did not do that. So I'm just always so interested in people who have been able to take that risk and make that happen. So I am excited to introduce you all to Nami, who is going to talk to us about her journey and how she has made this happen for herself and continues to live this nomadic life. So Nami, welcome to the First Mind podcast.
Hi, thank you for having me. I am Nami. I'm a lifestyle photographer and videographer. I travel around with my 3-year-old daughter. We started out in Thailand, and we are on our way to Costa Rica. But the goal is just to live freely and nomadically and go wherever our heart takes us and document it on the way.
I love that. So do you want to tell our listeners a little bit about like where you're from originally and just how this whole idea and plan came to fruition?
Yes. So I grew up in Southern California. Shout out to the IE. And I moved out of California in 2017 when I was 18 or 19. And I just always I knew I always wanted to live out of the country. I had a lot of options to go ahead and do so, and I just didn't take them. But I wanted to focus on some kind of career path that allowed me to live anywhere I wanted. And so I just started accepting jobs. I was working in administration, and I started accepting jobs in anywhere that I hadn't lived before. So that took me to Alaska, that took me to Seattle, took me to Puerto Rico, took me all over the States. And I did that for a few years, about 4 or 5 years. And then I ended up moving to Arizona. And I had just decided in that whole time, I was trying to find somewhere that I really wanted to settle down and find a home base. And I just decided that I wasn't going to be able to find my home base in the United States. And so I gave myself a year to prepare, and I didn't really know where I was going to go. I had a few ideas in mind, but I'm very much a go with the flow person. And so I was just whatever, at the end of this lease, I'm going to be out of this country. I ended up making a friend, and her sister lived in Thailand, in Chiang Mai, Thailand, for the last 6 years. And she was like, I really think that you would enjoy Chiang Mai. It's very much your style. I have a wellness background, and I just like to live freely. And that is exactly what Chiang Mai, Thailand is. And so I was just yeah, she told me she was going to her lease actually ended in April too, at the same time mine did. And she was like, I'm going to go to Thailand. So if you want to come along. And I was like, okay, I'm going to go. And so I just packed everything up And me and my daughter moved to Thailand, and we were there for about 8 months. And then we decided to leave, and now we're going to Costa Rica.
This is the most interesting and exciting journey. Like, I have so many questions. So, um, wow. Okay. First, I wanna try to connect your journey and the healing journey, if you will. But one
Yes.
of the things that I have always felt is that there's there's two things actually. I feel like within minority cultures specifically, there is sometimes this codependency, this feeling of like you don't move too far away from your family. Like we have a history of, needing each other to survive. Like, so, maybe you would go get your education, but then you would come back, you would put money back into your family's home. Like you did not leave your family. I remember when my oldest child was graduating from high school and she wanted to move to California and do a gap year. And I was totally supportive of it because my dream was always to travel. So I was like, yes, go, let's do that. Go, yes, you should do this. But I remember my family had a really hard time with that decision. There were certain people who really were angry with us, stopped talking to us, like just could not believe. And I mean, this wasn't even a move out of the country. This was just moving, within the United States to another state. And so I'm curious to know if you had any familial kind of pressure in that way. Um, like what was your experience when you made this decision?
So I think that I kind of prepared my family by just moving. Well, my first move was to Alaska, and I just wanted to get out of. I'm from like a little county in the IE, uh, and I just wanted to get out of there. I knew it wasn't right for me. I knew that it was just on an energetic level, I just did not feel good. And I wanted to, my goal was to like go make a bunch of money over the summer and move to LA, um, or out of state, but I just didn't know where to go. I ended up flying out of Seattle, and I was in Alaska working in the office for one of the fisheries. Um, and so they flew me out of Seattle. And so when I was done for the summer, I just didn't leave Seattle. I just decided to stay in Seattle. And I think because I've always just really had also a mind of my own. My family is very encouraging. It was not a big thing for anybody to leave California, really. For my family, I'm like the first nomadic person in my family. Um, but yeah, just me moving around. I probably lived in each place for a year, maybe a year and a half, max 2 years. And so when I told them I was going to Thailand, they were a little taken back because they're like, "You're going to Thailand with your 3-year-old by yourself? Like, what is your problem?" But it's not too far outside of normal Nami behavior. So
So, in addition to the familial pressure and kind of that codependency, I also feel like there is this American, just kind of like this conditioning of like America's the best place to live. Like there really is like this fear mongering, I think, if you will, about
yeah.
leaving America and going abroad. So, did you have any like anxiety about leaving the country? And if so, like how did you work through that?
Um, For myself, I've lived in all of those places. I was pretty much doing it by myself. Like I moved to Seattle, and I was living in the middle of Seattle by myself for a year and a half. Um, so doing, I don't know, I feel like I am always reliant on myself first. I definitely had to push out a lot of just stereotypes of living outside of the country, especially Thailand. For some reason, Thailand has this like crazy bad rep, like everybody is human trafficked and everything. But reading about California and the type of like things that go on in California, I didn't really feel too much different about going to Thailand. Plus, I also had connections over there to kind of like ease me into it, you know? So I did have to deal with outside, just like outside perspectives and really projection coming in. And after leaving the country, I'm like, I don't know, it's a lot worse in the States. Let's just say that. Everywhere has their bad spots, but it's a lot worse in the States. And a lot of people, I joined expat groups on like Facebook. There's a lot of melanated expat groups too for like specifically Black people going abroad and living in um, tons of different cities. You can literally just type in a city in any part of the country and you could probably find a Black expat group for it. So just like doing my research and kind of feeling out like what I should be aware of and kind of what areas to stay away from. I knew I didn't want to stay in Bangkok because I'm really not like a city dweller. But Chiang Mai is, if you go into any expat group and on Facebook or anywhere and you like ask them what's the safest spot for a woman traveling by herself or a single woman with a child or whatever, everybody is going to mention Chiang Mai, Thailand. So that just really kind of helped me push out the projections of everybody else, although I did definitely have to deal with it for sure.
Nami, I think you might be one of the bravest humans that I have interviewed. But something you said is very interesting to me. You talked about there is this stereotype or this perception that there's trafficking in Thailand. And I'm originally from Cleveland, Ohio. And there's
Mm,
been a lot of recent reports about children missing from where I'm from, the Cleveland and Akron area. Like huge amounts of children have just been gone missing. Our state is a state that's conducive to human trafficking because it's like in between major, ports.
mm.
So but I feel like as an American, you hear those stories and you somehow normalize it. Like you don't make it like, I don't know. It's just so
Yeah.
interesting. I remember, the first time I traveled abroad, I went to Europe and I am from a small town and I was working in the school system in that small town. And even just to go, I was going to Paris and people were like, aren't you afraid? And at that time, we were dealing with like mass shootings, which we're still dealing with. So I was like, I feel like I'm more afraid to be here, than I am to go somewhere else. So
Yeah.
that's so interesting that you said that.
Yeah. And I'm from Riverside County, which is like a huge hotspot for human trafficking. So literally, I just had decided in my mind, like, this is what I'm doing, and I'm gonna be able to handle whatever I'm able to or like whatever comes across my way because I don't want to live here anymore. The threat in living here is now way too big for me to consider it an option. So I don't know if Thailand is the place for me, but I'm going to figure out which place is for me. And along the way, I might run into places that, are not going to be, they're going to be a no for me. And I'm fine with that. So I just kind of had to deal with the outside voices, and to some extent, like, I'm always going to be open to the advice of other people, but you can really tell when people are just projecting and they don't know. Like, my mom was like, make sure that Wilder doesn't go in the jungle because she's going to be swallowed by a python. And I'm like, we're gonna be in a pretty big city, like that's not gonna be an issue, but there's just certain things that you have to deal with, like especially because there is such a huge fear for people outside, um or people in the States to live outside of the States. And I'm so confused as to how we even got there, because when you leave the States, everybody travels. Like, that's the thing to do. They go to different countries, they experience other cultures. And I'm just like, how did we get so far into our heads over here that we think it's like crazy to go outside of the country? It's
I
insane to
do
me.
think, yeah, I think it's intentional. I think that that's how you keep people loyal to, a geographic location.
Mm.
Because even I remember, my freshman year of college when I first learned about Africa, and this professor was showing us like these cities, these developed cities, these mansions, these homes. And I had never been taught that Africa looked like that. Like I had been taught that Africa was, you know, um, emaciated people who are starving. Like the projections and the pictures in the media, what they show us of Africa. And he showed us a completely different side. And he said one time in a lecture, it's almost like if National Geographic went to a cornfield in Oklahoma and was like, this is America. And that's the
Yeah.
only thing they showed, right? Like other people, like it's such a skewed view. So I
Yeah.
do think that there's an intention in, kind of that fear of making people feel like they can't go somewhere else, which is why I'm so glad that we have this opportunity to talk and have this interview, because I really want to normalize, what travel abroad looks like, which leads
Yeah.
to our next question. What would you say are some of the benefits of living abroad, and what have been some of the challenges?
So the benefits are definitely seeing firsthand that you can do it. You go out and there's people of all walks of life. There's people who have no money in their bank account that are couch surfing each country. There's people who have a 2-year savings and they're just seeing what they can make happen. There's people who look like you that you would never imagine. I met so many single mothers with kids younger than me out there. And
Wow.
that was like big for me because I was just like, I'm the only person that I know that is even traveling outside of the country or living outside of the country. So to be in Thailand and meet so many other single mothers with 1-year olds. I mean, there's moms that I met that had their babies outside of the country that they were even living in that were single mothers, that you don't have to stop there. Um, the networking. And I think when we are in our hometown or in our home state or even in a city, you make your little group of friends and everybody stays in the same place. I've met in the first 3 months that I was there, I met so many people that are now in South America or Belgium, or like everybody was traveling and they're all in different places now. So now I have connections in more places than even Thailand, and I only stayed in Thailand. So definitely the networking, and then also the new perspectives. It's a completely different way of life. Life is so much slower and the quality of life is so much better. People are connecting more. It's a lot more about culture. It's a lot more about family and friends and like genuine connections. And I feel like that's something that we're really lacking in the United States, just because of what we're conditioned and raised on. It leaves a lot to the imagination, and you wouldn't ever be able to get those type of perspectives if you didn't leave the country. um I think challenges is hard. I was really trying to think of some challenges because I'm very much so like I'm just gonna get it done type of person. I think that you have to be adaptable. I change challenges to necessities because you have to be adaptable when you're living outside of the country. It's not like you're a citizen there, so you're not guaranteed a spot there. You have to be able to like respond to change, especially if you're traveling short term. You have to be able to just like adapt to your surroundings, adapt to your people. You don't have a support system when you leave, or as much as a support system as you may have had when you got home, even down to if you lost your job. You can't just like up and go get another job and put some applications into whatever, just to make some money and get by. So definitely the need to be adaptable, being able to deal with the loneliness because you might not have a support system. I obviously it was just me and my daughter, so having to figure out how to make connections with people while also having my daughter along, you know. I'm not really much of like a club person or anything like that, but there's definitely like adult events and things that I just wouldn't be able to bring my daughter to, so having to like manage those type of things or figure out where, thankfully Chiang Mai is very kid friendly, so you can go to like cafes and they always have like playgrounds there for kids and stuff. So it's like a very big thing there. So I didn't feel too limited in that area necessarily, but it can get lonely, you know, like especially if you're an introvert, it can get very lonely and you can get complacent in just doing your day to day and they're like staying inside. I'm very much a homebody, so I try to make it a point to like go out and do something like 2 or 3 times a week, and talk to people and at least make an effort to socialize with people who were not 3 years old.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe dealing with the visa challenges too, because some countries like Chiang Mai, the visa was iffy. Just depending on what you get, there's different visa stipulations for each country, and trying to figure those out can be a little bit of a hassle if you're trying to stay places long term. Um, but yeah, the it's when you get out there, you realize that it's like living at home. You can find your food, you can find your nice spots that you like to be in, you can find your cafes, your parks, you can find your people. Like, it's not as scary as people think it is.
What about like language? Was that a obstacle?
Language was in Chiang Mai, it wasn't bad. Um, it's a tourist city, so a lot of the locals could speak, you know, like you can get by. I definitely tried to learn as much Thai as I could and still didn't learn too much. It's a tonal language, so even, you know, they can get a grasp of what you're saying, but when I was outside of Chiang Mai and in the more like local cities and hopping the borders, I went over to Laos and that was completely different. There's like no English anywhere, but you have resources, you know, like you have maps, you can hop in the expat groups on Facebook. That's like my number one resource for anything. You can figure out where you're going, you can ask people where is this spot, you know, like it's it was definitely something that you would have to adapt to, and I met people who just could not deal with it. But you can't expect to like go to another country and for them to speak your language, you know. You kind of have to be a little bit more prepared if you know that there's not going to be any type of translation, because sometimes Google Translate does not even translate to, you know, it's not helpful at all. I definitely was
Mm-hmm.
in some of those things, but I tend to like keep a little note on my phone of words that I like need to ask, or if I get to somebody who speaks a little bit more English, I'll ask them, how do you say all these type of things, or like run through what I think I know and, you know, get some pointers or whatever. But yeah, it wasn't too hard even in Laos, and that was literally no English. Like, you ask somebody on the street how to do something and they're like, I can't help you. So just being prepared. I always knew where I was going before I left my spot that I was staying at. Um, if you are like staying in hotels, usually the hotels will have it in the language, like they had it in Laos. So you could give it to the taxi driver, you know? And then obviously just like being safe. There's Uber over there. There's like, they have their different forms of Uber so you can figure out where you're going. There's, I don't know, I'm a very tech savvy and resourceful person, so it wasn't too crazy for me. Like, there's options for you, you know. If you don't feel comfortable, there's options to make it easier for you. You just have to be a little adaptable and like willing to mold to those types of things.
Wow. And then what would you say um this journey I know you mentioned your daughter, and I do want to talk about, tell me her name again.
Wilder.
Wilder. That is such a beautiful name. And
Thank you.
I feel like I've gotten to know Miss Wilder a little bit through your Instagram, and
Yeah.
the video of her performing just melts my heart. Like I love, like, you can just see the confidence and the free spiritness in her. Like, I love it. So tell the audience a little bit about how you feel this lifestyle is informing your healing journey, like your personal healing, your relationship with your daughter, what it's doing for her.
I for myself, I'm a very free spirit. So I think it's just allowing me to really like live in my fullness of spirit. And that's healing on so many levels, you know. I feel very fulfilled in just being able to like see the different perspectives and see that there's different ways to live life. I feel like in the States we're taught that you go to school, you go to college, you get your car, you get your, you know, your man or your woman or whoever, and you get married, and then you get your house, and there's just like a whole process to things. And outside of the country, like that's not, people look at you crazy. Like, what? You didn't like go travel? You didn't do anything that makes you happy? And so just
Wow.
like
Yeah.
being able to be around people with different perspectives is so healing, because you realize that you don't have to mold yourself to anything that isn't you. And I think that's also just kind of what I'm trying to show my daughter as well. Like, you are able to live anywhere you want. You're able to go wherever your heart calls you. We've stayed in a bunch of different places. I'm now realizing that instead of living in the northern mountains of Thailand, I really love to be by the beach. And that's where I feel happiest, and where I didn't think I could settle in any one place. I now know that there's places that I could settle that have the things that I need. And I feel like that's what I'm kind of learning on my journey. And that was essentially the goal, because I'm like, you know, eventually I'm going to grow old, and I'm going to want a place to call home for forever. I want to have a garden, and I want to see my child just run around and play. And I want to be able to travel other places and send things back home. And so just like being able to see exactly what I want my life to look like and get it from all the different places that I've gone along the way is really fulfilling to me. And also getting to see Wilder just soak everything up and be able to connect with kids that she can't even speak to, or do things like be in an open mic in front of a bunch of adults when she's 3 years old, freestyling a song about how she's 4, you know? There's just like crazy things that she just being able to run free and like have no care in the world. And also me being able to know that she's safe, and that I don't have to look at every person like they're going to steal my daughter, or like, you know, just it's peaceful and it's fulfilling. And each part of the journey is like just settles another place in my heart that lets me know that I made the right choice. I feel so much better not even having a home base than I did with thinking that I was going to have to stay in the States for the rest of my life, you know?
Wow. I think it's so interesting. I'm also a person who just, I've never had anybody verbalize it the way that you have verbalized it here for me, but I have never felt home anywhere. Um, I know where I'm from, there's, you know, a lot of people who are like, I'm going to live and die here. Like, and they really are, you know, loyal to the soil. Like, that is their belief. And like, I've just never, I don't know where that comes from. Like, we moved maybe, you know, 3 times in my youth, just from different cities in our in our area. And I don't know if that's what makes my spirit feel like I never was, you know, I don't know. Like, I just don't, I never felt like I was I've never felt home anywhere. Like, so
Yeah.
um that's so interesting that you say that, because maybe for us in the audience who have felt like we haven't had a home or don't belong, maybe that is what our next step is to go somewhere beyond these borders, and maybe we'll find that feeling somewhere else,
Yeah. Yeah, I always recommend everybody to at least move out of your state. If you can't move out of your state, at least move out of your city, or your town, or wherever you're at. Like, give your spirit room to grow, because our environment affects everything, and especially in a system that is working against us and not for us. I think it's really important to get out of it, out of its reach, and see what the other side even looks like, like, don't just go on vacation, travel, take a few weeks, take at least 2 weeks in another spot that's completely different than anything that and talk with the locals, and just sit there and don't do anything crazy. Just like try to live life how you live life at home and see what it feels like, because it's way different. It's way different. And I I knew that Thailand wasn't going to be my home. I feel like I've actually found my home in Costa Rica, and I didn't even expect that that was going to happen anytime soon. So the fact that I feel that now in Costa Rica, that I found somewhere that I can have an actual home base, that my spirit feels great, is wild to me, because I was in Thailand thinking like, wow, this is awesome. I could do this for the rest of my life, just float around, because this feels so much better than just being in one of the states. And I don't know, now I'm just like that. It's just the simple change of culture and the simple change of pace can do a lot for you. Even if you don't feel at home in that specific place, it can make you feel so much better in your spirit, which is the most important.
I agree. It's so interesting that you are landing on Costa Rica. So I finally and eventually made it out of my state. Like I said, I think I always had that longing, but I just wasn't able to make that happen until my 40s, which I'm just grateful that it happened. So I moved from Ohio I'm in Dallas, Texas now. But before I moved to Dallas, I actually did a Google search, and the search was, what are the safest places for Black people to live? And I started in the world. Like, I wasn't just looking for something in the States. This was off of my dad passing, and I was grieving, and I think I was just like, I don't even feel at home here. So why, commit myself to having to be in the States? So I was looking abroad, and Costa Rica is actually on the list of one of the safest places for Black people to live. And part of that is because of their they don't have like a policing system like we do. They don't have a military like we do. So you're less likely to be involved in like a police shooting or something, like a mass shooting or something like that. So I remember that coming up on the list. What was the attraction for you to Costa Rica?
For me, it was just the way that it felt. In a small beach town, like near the southern part, that borders Panama, and I don't. I honestly, I didn't think that I was gonna find something. When I left Thailand, I was like, I'm not gonna. Thailand is my foundation, and I know that if I don't find anything that feels good as Thailand, I'll just come back to Thailand. But I went on vacation to Puerto Viejo, and as soon as I got there, I was just like, this is crazy. And then we stayed there for 2 weeks, and literally within a few days, I was like, this is a place that I want to live. Like, this is a place that I want to have my home base. And it's crazy because I heard so much about Costa Rica being super expensive. And it's funny how you'll limit yourself. I was coming out of Thailand out of paying, like, you can pay $300 and have a full on 2 bedroom like condo there in a nice high rise with all the bells and whistles. And so I was just like, I know I'm not gonna, I'm not gonna get that good of a deal, but I was expecting to pay like more, like the States prices, $800 for a studio or something, and it's like $400 for rent over there. So even
Wow.
I'm even limiting myself and thinking like, I'll never live in Costa Rica. It's too expensive. And I get there and it feels amazing. And we start talking to locals and stuff, and they're like, oh yeah, you could. I tell them what my budget is. They're like, you're living luxury for that. And I'm like, what? Are you serious? So then I just started looking around like, okay, maybe this is something that I can actually do. And I I have had nothing but good blessings in just opening my mind to the option of it. And so, yeah, it's turned into one thing after another, and I'm just like, yeah, I want to settle in Costa Rica and have that be my home base, or at least a home base, and be able to like go back there instead of having to go back to the States anytime I need a break or
Mm-hmm.
whatever,
Wow. Um, I think the cost of living is definitely an interesting factor. Oftentimes, you know, in the States, finances are a big frustration. I mean, the cost of living is increasing every year, everything is high. We talk about housing, and just, in California, there was just recently something that came out about the number of people who are actually working people who do not have homes. Um, and I think a lot of times as Americans, we get stuck again just in the conditioning of this is the only option we have. And sometimes I think about, like, as a struggling single mom, because I also was a single mom, I had 2 daughters. How different maybe my life could have been, how much easier maybe my life could have been financially had I had the will to move my children abroad and live somewhere else. Like, it's like you're stuck in this mindset of like America is the only option, and you just have to like be miserable and not be able, live check to check. And like, I think that there are other options, like, and we don't necessarily consider that.
Yeah, definitely. And I've met people who like do the same work from home jobs that everybody does in the States, but in Thailand, where you can literally pay $200 month for your an entire house, and like your all of your bills together are still less than $500.
Wow.
So it's just like it's totally doable. They make it seem like it's not, and it's the end of the world. The most expensive thing oftentimes is the ticket together.
How often do you come back to the States? I know you said you're in the States now.
Yeah, I left Thailand and I wasn't sure exactly where I wanted to go. I ended up leaving Thailand early because my visa wasn't able to be renewed. And so I hopped over to Malaysia for a few weeks, and then I came back to the States. I was planning to come back to the States for the holidays because I have a really big family and everybody is usually dispersed. But everybody was coming back this year. And so I was like, okay, I'll go over there. And then because I was going to be on this side of the world anyways, I was like, I'm going to go travel around Central America. So I had actually planned to go to like Colombia and travel around Mexico and things after. But the plan is to not come back to the States more than once a year, just to
Wow.
pop in and see family. I do have a big family and we're very, very close. So I want my daughter to understand that aspect of family and just be able to like see everybody and operate. But if it's possible that I can get my family, even a majority of them, to just like go to a different country and meet up every year, then I would never go back to the States.
Mm. Wow.
It's got to be a
Wow.
really good reason to go back, because it's the same thing everywhere and it feels the same everywhere in the States. And I'm in a place that I don't want to sacrifice my well-being or the well-being of my daughter, even down to how we feel spiritually, just to come back here. You spend so much
Wow.
money in coming back. I get to see family, and that's the only thing that I love about it. But if I could bring my family out, then I totally would do that.
So, what do you does your family come visit you? Like, have you stayed in Thailand for 8 months? Did your family come to Thailand at all?
I had my best friend went out to Thailand with me. My family didn't come out, but that is also why I wanted to find like a spot possibly on the Western Hemisphere so that I could go over there, because you could really only stay in Thailand for a few months at a time, and you can hop around to the other countries. But I wanted to like find somewhere in Central America or South America that I could stay on that side of the world, and then they could, instead of paying $2,000 for a ticket, just pay $250 or like $500 max, and be able to do that. But my mom wants to travel. She is like looking for remote work and things like that. And my sister also, a lot of people in my family, and just like I think in general in America, are looking for other options because it's just getting out of hand, even, the cost of living and everything. So, yeah, I think that especially with me being on the coast in Costa Rica and on the Western Hemisphere, I'm going to see a lot more of my family outside of the country. But if I was staying in Thailand longer, I know they would have come out there as well. I just knew that I wasn't going to be there for super long, and I didn't know exactly where I wanted to be after. So it was just kind of like, well, let us know when you get settled somewhere, and then we'll come.
Yeah. I think that's really cool that your family is also looking to do this nomadic life or join you, or they're opening up themselves to the possibilities. When we initially got on the, the call, we kind of talked about, you mentioned like, how did we get here as a culture of Americans who are so afraid to travel abroad? But I think about just my own family and migration and just Black people in general. Like, my grandmother was raised in Arkansas in the South, and at some point decided that she would be safer in the North. And that's how we ended up in Cleveland. So it's interesting to me that you took a risk to go live abroad, which has now opened up a space for your family to take a risk too. Like, you are literally changing potentially the trajectory of your family's lineage and where you end up living. And that to me is healing something in and of itself. Like, that's wild. Like, do
Yeah.
you recognize that that is like your bravery is setting like up your whole family to be brave in this way?
Yeah, I definitely believe that I am a pioneer at heart. So I think that like we're called to certain things for certain reasons. And even in hopping around the state, I'm the oldest out of like so many cousins. We literally have over 20 cousins. I'm the second oldest. And even in me moving around different states and stuff, like my cousins are looking at different colleges to go to out of state, some of them calling me up saying they want to study abroad and like different things. So I definitely think if you have a calling to get out, then get out, because you're not just doing it for yourself. And that's like the whole premise of my brand that I put out in Naturally Nami. And I write blogs and everything for other people, for other single moms, in how to get to the places that I got to, because there's no help. And I naturally like to research. I naturally like to find my resources and everything. And I know it's not just for me. So I definitely think if you have even an inkling of I kind of want to go to a different country, just get up and go. Like, figure out, don't limit yourself, because you're going to go and you're going to inspire everybody else to also go.
I'm just in awe of you, girl. I really am. So to wrap things up, what advice would you give listeners who are considering traveling and living abroad, maybe that are struggling with the fear of doing so? What would you say?
I would say to hop in, just make a Facebook. If you don't have Facebook, I know everybody doesn't like to use Facebook. If you don't have Facebook, just make a little Facebook and hop in some of the Facebook groups. Go search up the countries. If you want to go to Italy, or if you want to go to Costa Rica, search up those countries and search up expat groups and get in them and just scroll through the posts, because there's like tons of people that are thinking the same exact way as you, and everybody is super encouraging, and everybody gives you the resources you need. Everybody answers all the questions that people ask questions that you didn't even think to ask yourself, so definitely hop in the Facebook groups and see firsthand from other people who are literally living that life right now that it's something that is attainable for you. And then I would say the other thing is to just be adaptable. If you feel like you need to have a whole bunch of money saved up, make it a point to save up that money and then just go. Like, don't give yourself a reason to not go, because you know what's going to happen. If you don't go, you're going to be doing the same thing that you've been doing. So figure it out and set yourself up for a new challenge. Like, grow a little, you can't grow unless you move. You got to move forward.
Yeah, and you can always come back.
You can always come back. It's not going to change. The same people are going to be there, and you can go right back to doing exactly what you were doing before. Like, you could pick up life as you did, as you were living before, and no harm, no harm, no foul. But you can also get out and never go back and live the best life that you never even imagined you could live.
I think that's really good advice. I do have another question that wasn't on the question list.
Yeah.
But one of the things I think about, Nami, as women, single women who are looking for love, something that I think about often is this idea of a soulmate, right? And how is it possible that everybody's soulmate is in a 50-mile radius of where they grew up? Like, it just doesn't make sense to me, okay? Like, when we're talking about something as, enormous as our soul, as expansive as our soul, that doesn't seem to make sense. So I am interested a little bit. I know you talked about, off of the podcast, you talked a little bit about your man, but did you find love abroad? Did you know him prior to leaving? Like, what was the journey? Is that too much in your business? You could be like, cut.
No, so I was wondering. No, I was definitely wondering what if that was going to be in the cards for me outside of the country. And my man is actually from the West Coast, and we actually met before I left the country, wanting to get out of the country, and that was number one for me.
Yeah.
That was the first priority for me. Like, I'm moving a lot, so no matter where I was going, I would need another nomad, and he is very nomadic. And I also just wanted somebody with a different perspective, and it's just like all of us grew up in the same, we're in different states, but we all essentially have the same 1, 2, 3, 4 type of mentalities, And so I was open to finding love outside of the country. I got lucky and I found love right down the street, essentially. But
Yeah.
that's so true. You never know who you're gonna meet. And I met a lot of people who got together outside, like they met in Thailand, they moved on and were in other places and stuff too. Or I actually was just watching a movie that said there was like a big percentage of people, like 80% of people or something, meet in airports and uh continue on their lives as lovers. So, your person could be sitting in the airport. You never know, but you wouldn't know unless you got out. You got to see.
I've heard that too. And I think one of the helpful things in the journey of finding love is this commitment to loving yourself, to learning to trust yourself, which I would imagine traveling abroad and being, left to only kind of your own devices and having to utilize your own self to survive, I would imagine that increases your self-worth, it increases your self-confidence. So to me, those are the things that make you magnetic for love, like to
Mhm.
attract that into your life. So I'm sure that there's, a portion of it that there's that aspect too, because what you said was he had to be a nomad too. Like you were not going to
Yeah.
allow partnership to prevent you from living the life that you wanted to live. And I think a lot of us, sometimes I think about even my own journey. I, I look at this time of singleness as a blessing because I honestly, one, I do have this belief that my person is probably not in the United States, but also I think that because I have this longing to travel abroad, God is not going to put a person who's going to stop me from achieving that, right? So like if I met a
Exactly.
person and settled down right now, I might not ever go abroad. And a part of my journey, I think, is definitely to go see what is outside of the US. And so I look at this time of being single, and I hope that, listeners, um, you can hear me when I say this. Like, this isn't a time of sadness or a time of like defeat. Like, this is purposeful. This single time is purposeful. Like, I want to learn more about myself. And I think a great way to do that, as you just explained in this interview, is to go outside of your environment and be
Yeah.
around other perspectives.
Yeah. And your person is definitely going to be aligning with the same values as you. So it doesn't matter whether they're in the States, same state as you, whether outside the country or whatever, they're going to be doing similar things to what you're doing. And you guys are going to be crossing paths because of that. So,
Yeah, I love it. So, in closing, can you just tell our listeners how they would be able to get in touch with you? Like, I know I was able to go visit your YouTube, which has some great videos of your travels on there. Your production is amazing. Like, your photography is so beautiful. So I loved checking that
thank
out.
you.
But what are some ways that people can get in touch with you if they're interested, maybe in taking this journey and they want to talk directly with you more, or just if they want to kind of see what you've been doing? How can they do that?
So probably the easiest one is to find me on Instagram, Nami Hewitt, Hewitt. In my bio, I have all of my links to everything else. But you can find me on YouTube, Naturally Nam. They didn't let me put the I in there, so it's just Naturally Nam, NAM. And then you can also find me on the World Wide Web, naturallynami.com. So yeah, those are my three things that you can find me at.
Okay. Well, I just want to thank you so much for being willing to come on and share your journeys with us, literally. I'm so excited. I I feel like I know you, so I hope that you're open to me coming to visit you in Costa Rica, because that is on my list of places that I want to travel to. Thailand is also on my list. So
Yes.
I love that we made this connection, and 2024 I feel like is going to be my year of exploration. I actually am working remotely now. Um
Yes.
yeah, so I'm ready. I'm ready to take this leap.
Yes, we would
Um,
love to have you. We would love to travel to Thailand with you or wherever else you go, you know. I tell all my friends, just tell me where you're gonna be, and if it aligns, I'll be there too.
oh, I love it. I love it. Well, thank you so much, Nami. And thank you, everybody who's tuned into the podcast. Thank you for listening. Um, we are approaching the holidays. So if you celebrate this holiday, I hope you enjoy your time with your family and your friends. And let's heal. Take care. Bye bye.